And indeed, he was a happy young man, and Warren is here this afternoon to compete on the high banks of Eldora. And we'll be back with more activity in just a moment.
Earlier today, we had a chance to compare the midget to the much larger championship dirt machine. Here are Bob Jenkins and race driver Steve Chassey.
The two types of cars we'll be seeing compete here this afternoon, a United States Auto Club midget in front of me, and behind Steve Chassey and me, a USAC championship dirt car. Obviously, there isn't a whole lot of difference except maybe in the size of these two race cars, but Steve, you have driven in both types of race cars, and there is a big difference. Let's start first of all with the engine. How does it differ from the engine that will be running in the Champ Dirt cars?
Well, first of all, this is a Volkswagen air-cooled four-cylinder engine. In the Champ Dirt cars, you got a Chevrolet V8 water-cooled engine. I don't know how many horsepower these things put out. I think they're around 300 horse, and you're looking at nearly 600 horse or better with the Chevrolet engine.
All right, now let's move back to the cockpit, which is pretty cramped. It's tough for a big race driver to get in one of these, isn't it?
It is, but it's surprising how much similar, how close the sizes are in all race cars. Some are a little tighter, but most of them are all nearly the same size.
On back to the fuel tank, obviously it holds a lot less than the championship dirt car.
Right. This tank holds 24 gallons. The Champ Dirt car will hold at least 70, hopefully 72 or 3 gallons.
But this is a very versatile race car. They're competing here this afternoon on a half-mile track. These cars can compete on the quarter miles or even smaller than that. But the Champ Dirt car is really about a half-a-mile racetrack is about as small as they compete on.
Really, they're very, very long compared to these. This is a 68-inch wheelbase car compared to a 96-inch wheelbase. And these cars we have run on a mile also. And believe me, they're very fast, and they react so much faster than a Champ Dirt car on a mile that I prefer to run them on the short tracks.
Let's move on back now and talk about this Silver Crown Championship dirt car. Another one of the obvious differences is the size of the wheels on this car as opposed to the midget.
Right, they have a 14-inch wide tire on a 15-inch wheel. And these are 13-inch, and I believe the tires are like 9 inches to 10 inches wide.
And we've already mentioned briefly the engine, but these things can crank out a tremendous amount of horsepower.
We hope to run at least 600 horsepower with one of these engines. But it needs it because this car is so much larger than the midget. It weighs almost 2,000 pounds, carries 73 gallons of fuel, has a starter and a clutch on board, power steering unit. It's just a massive piece of equipment compared to the midget.
Let's examine the cockpit a little bit more closely on this race car. There is a bit more room for the race driver, but there is also, as you mentioned, a clutch on this car, which means that these race cars do not have to be pushed to start.
That's right. They have an electric starter. You plug a battery into it, and they start it all by themselves. They pull this lever. I'll show you where it is right here. Clutch. You pull back on it. You can see the car moves. When you let it out, you engage the clutch and go on.
All right, and you also mentioned the fact that this has a power steering unit, which I'm sure is a big help to the driver.
Really, it is. This is Tommy Lee power steering unit from California. If this unit breaks, you can still drive it, but it's very difficult. But if you're racing with a person that has no steering gear, no power steering gear, at the end of a race, you're going to be a lot sharper and a lot more on top of the race car than he is just because of fatigue.
Steve Chassey has competed on many racetracks and many kinds of race cars. We thank him for helping us compare today a championship midget and a championship dirt car. Thank you, Steve.
Thank you.
We'll be back with the starting lineup for our first 20